tip.
Good afternoon. It is March 17th, 2025. You're listening to a little of column A, a little of column B, hosted by Will Alimonos and co-hosted by Zach Bishop. How are you doing today, buddy?
What is going on, Will? It is St. Patrick's Day. Conference tournaments are over. The bracket is out. We are just a couple of days away from all of the madness happening. Clear your schedules. Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Basketball all day long. I had some withdrawals yesterday. I don't know why the NBA did this to me, but they only had one game on after Selection Sunday, after the show. I needed more basketball. I may have overdone it just a tad, but just a couple of days off, and I'm going to be right back at it, and I'm ready to go. Are you ready to go?
I enjoyed the break yesterday. I'm ready to go. I don't want to kill the energy, all right? I'm with you with the vibe, but I'm not. I was fine having a little bit of breathing room yesterday. It's been a lot of games going on the whole time. I'm already tinkering. The bracket is out. I'm trying to process everything that just happened in the conference tournaments, which some of it is like, yeah, we're going to make that sound super important. Other times, like, wow, what a fluke. We're supposed to say this is going to change all of our decisions. So I'm excited, but there's an anxiety with all of the tinkering that I'm never going to get used to. And it's part of what makes it fun is that you don't know what's going to happen, but there's so many things that could happen that I'm just trying to analyze the way I'm going to get it wrong. And that's so many options. There's too many teams. But before we get to all the teams, before we get to the bracket, how about we summarize the last four in and the first four out? This was not how I anticipated going. This is not how I don't think anyone anticipated going. If we were to do the Jason Tatum thing here, where this was player A, or so let's say team A, do you think we might get some different teams here?
I think we could just go out and say it. Everyone expected West Virginia to be in, and very few people expected UNC to be in. So I think West Virginia fans are the most upset. Did you see the press conference earlier today?
No. Who did that?
West Virginia, I believe it was their governor, held a press conference threatening legal action against the NCAA. And rather than National Collegiate, it had National Corrupt, and it had it in the same sort of font. So they are definitely jumping into this with both feet.
I think they have a really good argument. I think UNC is holding on to such a lucky day that it doesn't really justify a whole lot. And then in the conference tournament, which we can talk about, like, this is a fluke game. Cooper Flagg is not playing. It's a miracle they're even in this game to begin with. And I know there's an argument that things didn't go quite their way at the end there, but still, what didn't go their way at the end is that a miracle was trying to be pulled off, and you're acting like there's some confidence in that. So I didn't like this team. They don't pass the eye test. I don't think they passed the numbers test. I don't know how UNC was out. We like KenPom, right? We were all in on that. You want to know the KenPom and the first four out? West Virginia 53, Indiana 48, Ohio State 39, Boise State 50. Now I know you're going to see a lot of teams like just ranked so far lower because those are like just the conference winners that have to get submitted just from winning all of that. But like this
is for at large.
This seems like if it wasn't UNC and the name UNC, there's no way they're in.
I know what they're saying, and I'm coming in. I'm the most biased one, so you push back wherever you feel necessary here. But we got to take a look. One of the people on the selection committee is the athletic director at UNC, Bubba Cunningham. He's the athletic director. This is not the first time. It's made up of people in the industry that have other jobs. Now they say, and I've heard this in the past, whenever they discuss a school that someone represents, they have to leave the room. So UNC starts to get talked about. The other teams have to, or Bubba has to leave the room. Rest of the guys talk about it. All right. That seems generally good. I don't know when you're talking about the other teams and you're in the room, if they're going head to head with your team, how you're not biased to say, you know what? I think Indiana was garbage this year. You know what? I don't think Boise State deserves it to be in here. As well as it came out, and I don't know if this is all the way true, but again, a little biased. This is what I've seen, that because he's the athletic director at UNC, if they make the tournament, he personally gets $100,000 as a bonus. Now, even if he is out of the room, even if he doesn't influence this at all, think about if you're the rest of the selection committee in here and hey, our buddy Bubba outside there, if we just pick his team, he gets $100,000. Like, that puts a lot of pressure on them because now he comes back in like, hey guys, what are you guys thinking? Like, am I taking that extra nice vacation or what am I doing here? So I don't know. I'm connecting dots here.
I don't like it. I think everyone was okay with saying the ACC wasn't so great. The teams that got in, I think, are very threatening. But this UNC team just isn't. Do you?
What I don't get is that pretty much from like the midpoint of the ACC conference season, it was Duke's good. Yep, they're for sure in. And then it was Clemson and Louisville at some sort of level. And it was UNC was on the bubble, and then they lost, and then they lost again, and it was, all right, well, this is going to be done. Like they had a chance, they couldn't get it done, so they're out. But then now all of a sudden, the committee says, well, Louisville, they're an 8 seed, and UNC, who no one thought was going to be in, is an 11. I mean, they have to play in the play-in game, but they're only a few spots lower. Like that doesn't make any sense.
Doesn't make any sense. The other thing is, I think they're in a good spot. Even if they win this playing game, I don't have a lot of faith in Mississippi here. I think San Diego State or even UNC is getting a pretty decent draw. Which, if you're supposed to say that could be West Virginia, you're thinking like, yeah, I think I'd like to have that opportunity. Wouldn't you? Like that's, I don't know. I think that's gonna be more frustrating. Is that if UNC ends up playing more than one game here, there's a right for a boiling point, and you're definitely the biased person to be talking about it. But I understand it. I get it. Like, I think this is the time where you get out your pitchforks. This UNC stuff went a little too far this year. Outside of that, is there much of an argument? I mean, I didn't really love Texas. I could have been talked into having them out, but we're so far down the bottom here that I just felt more confident in UNC not being good than really any other teams that got left out. But
I
what do
think
you
a lot of these teams lucked out. There weren't very many bid stealers this year. There was a handful last year, but this year, I think it gave the opportunity for a lot of these teams to be in where, if UAB had beat Memphis, that would have stolen away. I think pretty much they came out and said if UAB had taken that auto spot, that UNC would have been out. They would have been they were the last one to make it in. Door was shut and they just snuck their way in.
All right, overall thoughts on just the bracket layout here. We'll go through each one. We'll talk a little bit about some of the conference tournaments throughout exploring the bracket here. But overall thoughts, anything stick out for you of like, wow, they really did this by the committee?
Couple of things. You kind of touched on it where Louisville, they're playing in Lexington. So that's not that far away. So that's nice for them, which you would think would be nice, but not all the way sure, is Duke is playing in Raleigh, which also very close. The issues in the past is even if they weren't necessarily going to play each other in the next round, a lot of times UNC will also be in that, in Raleigh. So you think, oh, well, that's close for Duke. But then it turns into like, it's almost like an away game with all the UNC fans that show up. But with UNC just sneaking in, they'll be, in a different section. But then I think for not just geography based, but for the Providence pod, St. John's at Omaha, and then we'll play the winner of Kansas and Arkansas. So assuming St. John's wins, and more recently we've been getting more of those 15/2 seeds, but then either way, whether it's Kansas or Arkansas, it's going to be a matchup of Hall of Fame coaches. So that's pretty cool.
The collection of it in I'd say a smaller area is exciting. I think I don't want to. This is only going to sound like a diss to Providence, but I don't want to. It's just an excellent opportunity. I think when's the next opportunity of these three coaches going to be possibly in this window here? Like that's pretty awesome. It'd be awesome for any city. Is really what I should be saying, right? This would be great for any city.
Yeah, you get. I would say Kansas and Arkansas both underperformed this year, so both disappointed to be at the 7 and 10 spot. But I would say on the other side, St. John's pretty excited for them to be at a 2 seed, first time winning the Big East title in decades. Rick comes in and in a couple of years has really made this a legit program.
I'm into the Johnny's momentum. We'll get to them once we break down the bracket. What stood out for me across the whole bracket was obviously a ton of SEC teams. But if you ask me, the majority of them got put in the worst spots. Like if I were just to say,
How so?
I just think if you were to blindly say, like last week I was SEC or the field, and I was like, there's just so many teams in the SEC. Like, why would you still pick the field? I think if you did the opposite in the bracket now, or if you picked against SEC, you'd be all right in this first round. I think there's three that are kind of closer to locks, but I think every other one is in a vulnerable position where they didn't really get a good ranking. We'll go through the bracket, so I don't want to do them all. I'm just saying, like, while I was respecting the SEC of getting so many teams in, I think a lot of them are in a really bad spot, and that stood out for me. Of like,
I
all right, sure, come on in,
I
but you're getting in all these tough ones where it's like the upsets
I
always
think
happen.
it's tricky because when you have 14 sets the record, the last record was 11, so it wasn't close. Like it blew the record away. Like there's only two teams in the SEC that aren't in in this tournament, which is just wild to think about. But I think that's just going to be the case is when you have 14 teams, there are going to be some that are at the top line that are going to be favorites, and there's going to be other ones that are a little more in the mix.
Well, let's just get into it here. Let's start with the Southern bracket where Auburn is going to have the 1 seed. We're just going to kind of preview these first round games. We're not going to do picks because we're still going to do some picks against each other here. So we'll mostly just summarize some interesting things about the teams, how we're feeling about them. You kind of already mentioned that we've mentioned enough on this that Auburn's been pretty good, but the last couple of weeks, or at least this past week, it's a little icy now. I was very confident in that, regardless of what would happen in these conference tournaments, that I wasn't going to look at Auburn any differently. Well, there's a lot of close games that just didn't go their way. Is it wrong to suddenly say, well, what have you done for me recently in Auburn?
Were you surprised that they got the number one overall after losing 3 of the final 4?
No, I still wasn't. I still thought they had the best year. And I still think it's really hard to go to the entire slate, and maybe you could have held that against them. But the slate they went up against, I don't think any of the other teams would have had a better odds against this. Like, I think Duke might have struggled. They would have slipped up in it at some point or something similar to this, I imagine. So I think it was all right. I just think it's a tough schedule. And if they'd won, we would have been like, obviously, like a clear cut number one. I think they would have been an immediate favorite, like a step above everybody.
I I think there are other years where a team can get out so far ahead that it just like it doesn't matter. But I was interested based off of Duke winning without their best player, without the best player in the country, as well as without arguably the best defender on the team, as well as Florida. Florida's been good all year, and then them making the push through the SEC tournament and winning in, I would consider it to be dominant fashion. I think that I would have thought there would have just been more conversation about it. Not saying that one of the other teams deserved it more. And I mean, even Houston. When was the last time Houston lost? Have they even lost a non-overtime game, all year? Like they've been amazing. So I felt like it was very easy. I thought it would have been a lot easier to make the argument than I just don't feel like I've heard it so much. It wasn't like there were no teams just right behind.
Hey, Ken Palm noticed. I just saying the numbers had them drop a little bit. All right, Duke's 1, Florida's 2, Houston 3, Auburn 4. That was not the order most of the year. So if you're looking for a little bit of a shift, I think you're going to find it more over there. I don't think they're going to have any problems here in the first round, so there's not really much analysis to go into all this. But the next matchup between Louisville and Creighton is certainly an interesting one, especially if
First one. This is the first one on Thursday.
This is going to be quite the kickoff here, because I think this is going to decide a lot of brackets, especially if you feel similar to what you just said about Auburn's struggles right there. If you agree with them being a little slow out the gate here at the end here, this is the time where you don't want to be slow. You don't want to be struggling. You want to have momentum. And these Louisville and Creighton, these teams could have some momentum after this win, because I think these are decent teams. I think this is one of the hardest matchups of this whole first round matchups of all of them. This is going to be the first game too, so again, we're not doing picks here, but Louisville ACC, this is a pretty decent team. I think the teams that got in are pretty good. Creighton still got the big man down there, and I think that the Big East is represented fairly well here as also. What could you say about this other than just being a really, really tough choice?
I love when they do this. Make the first game of the day 8-9 matchup. So as close of a seeding as you can get. I'm looking at the odds right now, and Louisville's a 2.5 point favorite. So not quite a coin flip. A little bit of a lean towards Louisville under a possession spread. Is pretty tight. So just right off the bat, like 50% of people's brackets will no longer be perfect. 2 hours into this thing, you don't start. We're not starting you easy. We're not starting with a 1 versus 16 or one of these really dominant teams. Nope. This is going to be fun. You've cleared your schedule up for Thursday. You're going to get a good game right from the jump.
There are sections of the bracket. This happens every year where you feel like there's some teams you can trust, or at least trust a little bit more than others. And this is one where I feel pretty good. Like you could trust either one of these teams. And then that kind of affects how you feel like going forward into the next round. There are other parts of this where I don't trust either of these teams, and like someone's got to win. And then if you have either of those teams advancing, it's like, well, I didn't trust them in the first round. How am I going to have them going?
How am I going to trust them in the second
another round? And then when that doesn't happen, I'm going to look like an idiot, being like, well, I didn't feel good about that either. But somebody's got to go. So this is one where I guess it's kind of a good thing to have. But yeah, two solid teams here. Next matchup is a little controversial between Michigan and UC San Diego. Michigan coming off of the hottest finish to a season you're going to get here. I mean, cleaning house, who would have thought that was going to happen? It certainly wasn't my first pick. And even when they did win, and the bracket reflected this as well, we both immediately said we would love to face Michigan in the tournament, even after they won. Did we not? Like, let's just be honest about this.
Just like so many of their games, they just barely won, just over and over again. And it just like they had the run in February that we talked about, where I think they went something like 9-3 and had a losing differential, point differential. Just like how, like all of their games just very close when they win. And I think I said at the time, and it sort of happened before they went on this run in the tournament to kind of, I don't know. Do you think it proved that they're good, or do you think it hid some of the problems that they had at the end of the season in the regular season?
Well, how are we supposed to feel about Wisconsin, who's basically the opposite of Michigan, where they've had all these close games, have been in a lot of close games, but they lost all of them? I'm supposed to feel like miraculously better about Michigan for just winning these, barely winning these close games. And the same thing with Wisconsin. I'm supposed to feel bad about them losing to a 3/4 shot, full court shot. And if you feel like Michigan State is good, this is how things ended out for them. Like this is. There's certain victories and losses that are just so close that that's the difference between all of this. But I think Michigan is properly ranked at 5. I don't think that they're anything special. I don't think they should be any higher. And I think they're very vulnerable right now. UC San Diego has some legit shooters, and sometimes just putting the ball in the hoop is all you got to do, right? That might be all it takes here. But I'm skeptical of them. Congratulations on a Big Ten victory here, but I'm not so hot on them. Anything for UC San Diego? I know they got some shooters out there.
Sure. Actually, I was more thinking at the other end. I got their KenPom numbers up. They're number 2 in the country on defense and turning teams over. And why that's a very big problem is that Michigan is one of the worst teams at allowing teams to turn them over. So if their guards are not on point, I think like the turnover margin is going to be huge, but will help Michigan out on the huge side of it is they have 2 7-footers. UC San Diego did not play one Power 5 school. So it's one thing, you got the lockup defense, but sometimes you just run into, all right, these guys are just way too big. And like this is a Power 5 school, and the guys at the Power 5 schools are just bigger, stronger, faster. And I just don't know if they're going to be able to, like, even if you win the turnover margin by a lot, are you still able? Because even though you've turned them over, you still need to score at the other end. And I don't know if they're gonna be able to pull it off.
It's so funny. What could Michigan have done to change our mind? I mean, they won, right? And yet we refuse to buy any of it.
Yeah.
Right? Like it sounds ridiculous. If you're trying to explain to somebody who's not following any of this at all, it'd be like, so they won all of the last games that if any of the other teams had won, you'd say, well, clearly that team's so much better. But we refuse to believe that Michigan's good, and they won all these games, and now we're still not buying it. We're still saying, no, lucky. Good for them. Wow. I've seen it everywhere else. All right. It's not like we're the only two coming up with this. It's just a weird pattern.
I mean, they whipsawed us around. They lose the last 3 of the regular season, 2 by double digits, and then they win the Big Ten conference tournament. So that means they had to win 3 games in a row. So it's just like, well, I don't know which of these teams is going to show up. That game against Maryland where no timeout, they just get it to the point guard, and then just no one picks him up. He just goes right to the hoop, lays it in for the lead. That was wild. That was very impressive.
Yeah. No, I think they've got some big wins. I think they've made some great plays at the end of the games here, but even in those games, they didn't play particularly well. So just like I'm giving them credit for staying in the game, but I don't think they can continue to win some of these ugly games here. All right, next matchup here, Texas A&M versus Yale. Ivy League has been kind of sneaky in the past years. I kind of always find one way or another to pick one of them throughout the entire bracket here, but A&M a little bit more defensive for being an SEC team here, and it's an opportunity. I mean, are we upset with these rankings here? Does it seem like kind of where you had these teams?
Believe it or not, I did not watch a lot of Yale this year, but I have been told over and over again that the SEC is really good. So I did watch Texas A&M, and I would like to think that Texas A&M could take care of a little Yale Ivy League school. Don't you think?
I think this year they could. Normally, I'm very pro the Ivy thing, but Yale was lucky to even make the tournament last year. If you remember last year, they won like that crazy buzzer beater just to get in, and then they had an even a crazier matchup where they won in the first round. I I don't think that happens this year. I think that this is the year where they were lucky to even get in again. But I could be completely wrong where somehow that pattern just continues again and we're just disrespecting all of this. But maybe not this year. Next matchup, Mississippi versus the winner of the playing game between San Diego State and UNC. I mentioned this earlier that I'm not super convinced on this Mississippi team. I think this is a bad place for them where they're only going to look bad in this. I'm picking the field. I think San Diego State is going to take care of UNC, but either way, I think UNC might even be able to beat this team. Is that a weird feeling to have?
No, I don't think so. I think we've seen in the past that sometimes that playing game can almost vault you, and you've already dealt with the pressure. You've already got a game just out of the way. You still have a day of rest in between. It's not like you're playing back to back, and if you win who you're playing, where the team that's waiting for you isn't sure who they're going to play. So there's a little bit of uncertainty 48 hours before you're going to play.
Next one, Iowa State, Limpsicum. Iowa State's going to be out without was it Keyshawn Gilbert? He's going to be done for the tournament. He's not coming back here.
Yep.
I still think they got a pretty good spot here where they should hopefully be able to take care of Limpsicum. I do not have a ton of info on them. Do you have anything to report?
Nah, not too much. Even with the injury, they're still 14.5-point favorites. So I think that the injury will not hurt them in this matchup, but could hurt them further down the line.
All right, but the next one's kind of a fun one here. 7 Marquette versus 10 New Mexico. I've enjoyed watching Marquette. I think Jones is just a fun playmaker, and I'd like to see them, but I think they'll have their hands full here. I don't think this is just a given matchup here. It should be a pretty decent game. Anything you know about New Mexico?
I didn't the only thing with New Mexico, they're Mountain West Conference, and it just seems like every year the Mountain West Conference, not the past couple of years they didn't, not so many, but in the past, like put a bunch of teams in, and then all of a sudden it's the evening on Thursday. It's like, wait, all the Mountain West Conferences like teams, they're already out. Like, how is that even mathematically possible? So I would just say, want to be concerned.
The last one here, 2 Michigan State versus Bryant. I still like what Michigan State did at this whole end of the year. Again, they did not win the Big Ten. I think probably should have and could have, but I'm not upset by losing by more or less a one possession. This team has weaknesses, and being down 3 late in the game is a major weakness. It seems like that might happen again, so I don't know if they're necessarily the safest bet, but I still think this is a really tough out of a team. They play really good defense. They make you really pay attention to every one of your possessions, because if you make a mistake, they're going to take advantage of it. And that's really the only way they can get offense as well. So, like, if you don't make mistakes, you can kind of almost starve them and then keep them out. But, like, that's hard to do. If you're not going to take care of the ball, that's not the team to do it against. I think they're a real threat, though. I think they got a good shot here, especially if Iowa State is going to be without the Gilbert guy, and Auburn's not going to be the hottest team here. I think this is a really good draw for Michigan State, and it's the homer in me just saying all of this, but I'm very happy with this draw. How do you think? Am I naive for doing this?
I agree with you have toughness. You're well coached, and you have a lottery pick. So those are all awesome things to have. But I think everybody also knows like how you like when you go in and at halftime you're 1 for 12 from 3, and then you finish the game, 3 for 20 and you lose because you couldn't hit threes, like everyone is going to be like, oh yeah, yep, that makes sense. Not sure when it's going to rear its ugly head, but like if you go down, like I have to imagine that's the way it's going to happen. So it's just like, can you avoid a absolutely terrible shooting night and just make it maybe you just like don't take too many. Maybe it's like a 1 for 8 situation.
I like the opponents that we have the opportunity to play to really advance throughout this. I'm not scared of that. I'm terrified of everything you just said, where I don't think it matters who we play. There's going to be days where these guys aren't going to make shots, and it's not going to matter if it's against Auburn or the first round. We're going to be vulnerable. So like
Yeah, I think that's a good way. A good way of putting it. There's just a vulnerability there that not necessarily every team has.
all right, let's move on to the East section, just jumping right across here where Duke is atop. Duke having kind of a rough finish here where Cooper's allegedly injured and possibly going to be out for, I don't know, a round or two.
What do you mean allegedly injured?
I think he's fine.
We all saw the video, and then he didn't play in the rest of that game or the 2 games afterwards.
Oh no. I'm not doubting the injury. I just think he could have played if he had to play the other night. Like I think he's good to go.
Quite possibly. No, I won't be too high about how too crazy on this, but it was for sure the worst game of this year. This game is at noon on Thursday. I clear my work schedule so I can watch this. I get overruled on that. And it's like, it's a half an hour meeting. We're playing Georgia Tech. We should be up by 20 by the time I get in there, halfway through the first half. Oh no. After that, I sit down, I got it recorded, I'm watching it, and we're 0 for 13 from 3 to start. We're down, I think we're getting down 14 points. It's not a crazy margin, but it's like, well, this isn't great. Then Malik Brown, he's holding on to his shoulder as he walks off. He had just returned not that long ago from a dislocated shoulder. So, well, that's bad. And then, I look away, then I look over, and now I'm seeing Cooper Flagg on the ground. And then I see the replay. He jumps way up in the air for a rebound, and now he's out. We do come back to win the game, pretty casually, but then he's out, and just you have all these expectations, and all right, I wasn't for sure that we were going to win the ACC tournament. I didn't know how seriously we were going to take it, but now you start worrying about the big tournament. So glad that we rested him through the ACC tournament and was able to win that. We're playing on Friday, so that's a little more time, but yeah, we should be able to take care of the 16 seed, but I'm really hoping that he's young and that ankle heals quickly, because I do know that sometimes it's not necessarily the initial injury. It's that once you roll the ankle, the likelihood that it rolls again just increases. So there is a level of concern that I have today that I did not have last week.
I think he's fine. I think you can get away with resting him one more game. Or if you wanted to get, the thing is, you just can't play these kids limited minutes. I don't think anyone's responsible enough to be like, hey, just go out there and be careful. Like, I don't think anyone.
Yeah, you can't.
He's not going to be like, oh, it's just 20 minutes today. Okay, yeah, no problem, coach. Like, he's going to be like, no, I'm playing Cooper Flagg. I'm going to play starters minutes. So I could see maybe holding him out one more game, because there's no way you could just slowly introduce him back in. But I am under the belief that I think he's going to be fine, and I think this team is going to be fine. And it was nice to have a little bit of a scare almost without him of what do we do now? And I think it's almost good that you guys did that, and that if he does come back, it's going to be like, all right, but you don't have to do that immediately. He's coming back, and I think he will be back. All right, so nothing else really to report there, but I do think we get an interesting matchup the following in 8 in Mississippi State versus 9 Baylor here. Baylor.
Oh, just to go back real quick, I am very happy that I am playing at about 3:00 on Friday. I feel like it's early on Friday, but nice. Are you upset that you don't get to play until 10:00 on Friday as an East Coast team? You're going to be one of the last teams to play, so you don't have that like relaxation of like, okay, we played, we won, now I can just enjoy these games? Or do you like it of you don't have to worry about it? You there's no we got upset, now this is terrible, until like the last possible moment.
I think March Madness is like the opposite of relationship. I'd rather go to bed angry than wake up angry that my team lost and then have to watch the rest of the day. I can enjoy the entire day. And then if we blow it at the end, you know what? It didn't ruin the entire day.
You could
So
just go. You could just go to sleep.
I could
Yes,
just
I've
go to
definitely
bed
been in a
angry.
situation
Yeah.
of losing the Elite Eight game. That's the early game where it's too early to go to bed, and maybe you're right. If something terrible happens to you, which I don't think it will, but then it's just all right. At least I can just go to sleep and make this go away. But when you just have to sit and stew and watch other basketball, yes, it is. It can ruin it.
So I think that's I'd rather have this. I have had multiple years where we've been the first game, and the first game it's nerve wracking because it's always an 8-9 or some sort of close call where it's like I don't know where we really rank, and it's the first day and nobody knows anything at this point. I feel like almost by the second day you kind of got a feel of wait, how do the conferences hold up on day one? Like, is this going to be a pattern for day two? The first game you have none of that. You don't know anything. You're based it all off of like Michigan winning the Big Ten, and it's like, wait a minute, is Michigan State even good? And then everyone's like, well, we don't even like Michigan. It's like, well, what do we
Is
believe?
Thursday the crazy day or is Friday the crazy day?
Yeah, I don't
You
know.
don't know.
So I'm all right with playing late for purely selfish reasons of being like, well,
I
can't
think
ruin
sometimes
all
that can help too. Of if there are some upsets, during the day, if your team's playing later, I mean, it doesn't make a ton of sense, but I feel like somehow it makes the team lock in more, knowing, especially a team like Michigan State, of all right, you're the 2 seed, you're bigger, stronger, faster, like you should win this game, and you see, ooh, oh, I saw that close scare, and I saw those two upsets. Okay, if we don't play, we can't take this team lightly. Like we got to show up.
Yeah. All right. Anything else for Duke?
Nope, all set, ready to go for Friday. Hopefully Coop's playing.
I think we got a really good matchup here between Mississippi State and Baylor. Baylor on paper sounds like a March Madness dream team. I don't think it's really performed throughout the regular season this year. And for that, I think Mississippi State's got some decent wins as well. But I don't think this is a lock for anything. I think a lot of teams have been looking forward to, or at least I've seen analysts so far reading all of this sort of looking forward to Duke versus Baylor to get that sort of matchup of some former players here. But like I think they shouldn't be looking that far ahead is really what I'm trying to say here. I think you got a pretty decent matchup. But you would know Roach a little bit more than any of us. Well, what do you think? Is it March?
He is a guy that can, get a bucket when you need it down the stretch, which not all the teams have, and he's done it at the at the highest of levels. He was on that Final Four team with Paulo, but I don't even think he starts most games. Like he is not like the main guy. I mean, if you're a casual fan, you should really keep an eye on VJ Edgecombe. He's going to be a lottery pick. He played on the I'm blanking on it, but he played on the Olympic team. I can't remember what country it was. So he's getting some of that experience. But he's the guy that you're going to want to watch. So I think that's going to be exciting. I think this is going to be a very tight game, and I think it's going to be this one along with some other ones that after the first round when it comes out, it's either going to be wow, look at SC just as good as we said, or some of these go the other way. And a bunch of these are coin flip games, and it doesn't really matter. You're going to look and go, oh well, why'd they let 14 of them in? Look how many already lost.
Yeah, I don't know. I think Mississippi State would match up with some other teams a little bit better, but we'll see. All right, next one going down the bracket here. Oregon number 5 versus Liberty 12. Liberty's definitely got some shooters. I don't know if you could trust any of those numbers. That's going to always be the case with a team like this, but Oregon at 5, this 5-12 is always a vulnerable sort of matchup here, so it's hard to say anybody's a lock. Any tidbits about either team?
I feel confident about. I feel more confident about this 5-12 matchup than the other one we talked about. That of the 5 winning.
All right. Next one, 4 Arizona versus 13 Akron. Arizona's been up and down all year. Every time I think you want to trust them, they might let you down. Is this a team you think you could trust in the tournament? Exactly. No, that's it. Like, and then it's like, well, all right, I think they can handle this round, but how far do I want them to go? And then I've seen them mail in a dud this whole time, and then it's like, why do I want to push them that far? Also, this is a tough one. I think you're crazy for saying Akron's like going to be favored in this first round, but I don't think I want to have Arizona going very far after this.
Yeah, Arizona just up and down all year, and just not really sure which team's going to show up, and might have a little to do with Caleb Love, who firsthand I've seen how he can shoot you into a game and shoot you right out of a game.
Yeah, well that's one where I struggle to have Arizona really trusting them like farther into it versus this next matchup in 6 BYU versus 11 VCU. BYU's had a ton of good victories towards the end of the year. VCU did what they had to do to be in the tournament. So like I could see a little bit of momentum both of these ways. I don't want to get looking too far ahead of who they could playing of Wisconsin or Montana, but I guess I could see both of these teams making a run. And that's going to make this first round a really bracket buster if you go one way or another. I'm looking at it that way. Are you seeing it any other way?
I I think I like BYU a little bit more. VCU makes the run to win, but in the A10, where BYU being in the Big 12 and won a whole mess of games to end the year, ends up getting destroyed by Houston. But I mean, I think that just has a lot more to say about Houston than about BYU.
Yeah, that's all right. Should be a decent game. All right, next one, Wisconsin, number 3 versus 14, Montana. Wisconsin just do, right? Like, you just can't keep losing close games, or is that just what this team is?
I think that this Wisconsin team is different from years past, and I think that like that luck is similar to Michigan. It's going to even out, and so I think this is a good spot for Wisconsin.
Yeah, I think so too. I just all of those games could have went any other way, and we'd be looking at this team even more, as like a 2 seed. I'm not saying they had the case for it, but there's some coin flips that could really adjust a lot of this, and I'm glad they didn't get fallen like Michigan did to 5 here. Like the 3 is I think where they should be. All right, next one, 7 St. Mary's versus 10 Vanderbilt. I feel like Vandy's been a bit of a trap all year at home. They're not going to be playing at home throughout all of this, and St. Mary's does have some really sneaky big wins throughout here. Who's capable of a bigger run here? Either of these teams?
I like St. Mary's more. I think like the Vanderbilt, this is the bottom of the SEC, and so this might be where at some point the line gets drawn of were you that good or you just had a lot of opportunities, and like you said, Vandy plays at a sideways gym, and I think it throws off the coaches and it can throw teams off when they have to play there. And like you said, these games will not be at that crazy gym.
All right, lastly here, number 2 Alabama versus 15 Robert Morris. I think Alabama will take care of business here. I think they had a pretty good tournament. I don't think there's anything to feel differently. There's vulnerabilities to this team. There's a strength that a lot of other teams are going to have their handfuls dealing with. I don't think we're going to have a problem with Alabama until we get a little bit farther into the bracket, but there's a hell of a punch on this team.
Something to keep in mind, or at least keep an eye out for. Might not know before the game, and even if we do, might not be able to help you for further on. But Grant Nelson has a knee injury, game time decision, but he is one of their better players. So doesn't derail everything, especially as a 2 against a 15. But definitely something you're going to want to check before you hit that final submit on your bracket.
All right, moving on to the west part of the bracket where we have Florida on top against Norfolk State. Florida, as an up and down as the whole season was, it's a good time to be up. This is kind of a dominant performance. Is that wrong to say?
Oof, it was for sure dominant.
I'm impressed. I don't think we really need to put much analysis into all this, that if you just think the SEC is really good and this is the team that made it out top, it just should be a statement and doesn't really need to be spoken about any more than that. Moving on to the next part here, Connecticut number 8 versus Oklahoma 9. This is an interesting one. I mean, I've already crossed off UConn here. I crossed them off way into the year. Somehow they've snuck in. Somehow they're still alive. And somehow this is a toss-up matchup where they're going to have a chance to win in one more round. And once they win one round, Zach, what happens? It just goes. Any love for UConn, or you just continue to be terrified by them?
Well, I'm glad that they're at the 8-9 seed. So even if they win their first matchup, and if they win by 20 points, like they've been doing the past 2 years in the tournament, yeah, then they have to go against Florida, and Florida has been good all year, and so it's going to, if they somehow come out and beat Florida in a dominant fashion, I mean, then we're really going to have to sound all of the alarm bells. And I don't know what we're going to have to do, but we're going to have to do something.
I think it's witchcraft. Like, we have to look at a different science, like a completely different religion. Something has cursed us that we have just suffered through so many UConn victories. I don't think this is the year, but somehow they're not in a spot where I'm like, oh, there's no way they can't do it from this year. It's like, well, once they get through this, if Florida, a player goes down and suddenly they kind of take down the 1 seed, now they're riding the 1 seed road in, like it's there. Like, I could envision it. Can't you? Like, it's terrible. We got to move on to something else. Number 5, Memphis versus 12, Colorado State. Memphis has been kind of a hot team. I think they've got better players. Colorado State's actually been a pretty hot team here as well, but I I think Memphis has been one of those teams that they're a nice story, and it's like, yeah, maybe this will be the year. But I've yet to really feel like they're a true threat, and they might get a couple rounds here, but I don't love this for a super super deep run. Are you looking at it any differently?
I I just think that the AAC this year just wasn't very good. I mean, a one bid league, and I feel like they played kind of at odd times. Like they'd be the ones that played Sunday afternoon, so I saw them more kind of by accident than other teams. But I feel like they never had a big game. It wasn't, when we were doing the, hey, what games to watch this week? Memphis was never on the list because they were never really tested. So I think the 5 seed is high for them.
I think it's a very unproven team, as you said, and if they suddenly pull off victories here, they can laugh at all of our faces. But until then, I have my doubts. Moving on, Maryland number 4 versus 13 Grand Canyon. I don't want to say this is a toss-up game here, but there's something sneaky about Grand Canyon. They pulled off a victory last year, so that's not foreign territory. That being said, Maryland's had some really good wins this year as well. A solid, steady team. What more could you want out of that?
I think you got to be careful with well, this school got the upset last year, especially with the protocol going on. Like, make sure you take a look. It's like, hey, how many of the guys from last year's team were on here? As well as now Maryland's looking at it, and I'm sure the coaches mentioned it, almost like bulletin board material of, hey, this team got the upset last year. So I feel like it makes it even harder for this underdog to happen.
That's some good logic here. You've been filling out a lot of brackets for a lot of years. Moving on, number 6 Missouri versus 11 Drake. I've seen Drake being one of the hotter teams here. This is a bit of offense versus defense. Drake's got some defense. Missouri's got some offense. I've seen Missouri lose some games that I didn't expect them to lose. That Kentucky game just recently, I think we both picked Missouri over Kentucky, and I don't know. There's something sneaky about this Drake team that just seems somewhat destined, and again, I'm not in love with this SEC spot here. I think they might have had a better shot against a different team, maybe another 11 seed matchup in some of these other parts of the bracket here. But this is gonna be a tough one if you ask me. Any thoughts on Missouri or Drake?
Missouri, all sorts of upsets. I think if the SEC had let them, they would have stormed the court like three or four times, but they kind of had to stop because they were costing the team too much money. A little bit of a rough landing to end the year, being against Vandy, Oklahoma, and Kentucky, which weren't the premier teams in the SEC this year. So I almost think that this game might be the hardest. It's like once they win this one, then they go against the hard teams, and that's when they were really going to lock in. So I think I'm almost more nervous for this game for them than the ones afterwards.
All right, next game, Texas Tech number 3 versus 14 NC Wilmington. I've liked Texas Tech a lot. I think I like Texas Tech a little bit more than Iowa State. I think we've talked about that throughout the podcast season here, and it's fine. 3 seems good for them.
Yeah, I'm fine with 3. Yeah, I thought they had a good year.
Yeah, this is one of those teams where it's there's not a story here, right? It's not Cooper Flag on this team. It's fine. Keep it moving. Number 7, Kansas versus number 10, Arkansas. The battle of the coaches. It's a shame that the players on the court are not the level of the coaches that we respect so highly. This is going to be an ugly matchup, if you ask me. Nobody should be looking at these as the almighty Kansas team and the almighty Coach Cal team. These are not representative of what they've accomplished over in their careers. These are survival teams that are lucky to even be in the tournament, if you ask me. But somebody's got to win. I wouldn't have them going very far. What are your thoughts on this?
Arkansas does have Boogie Flan coming back. The thought was he was going to be done for the year. It was weird because he got hurt, and then Arkansas immediately got a win. So then it was weird because hey, this is a guy I think averages 19 points a game or something. Wasn't just a rotation player. Hey, he's the one that puts the points up, and so you got that on that side. So maybe they'll be rejuvenated a little bit. My concern is more on the Kansas side of you've mentioned it a few times, just leading towards the end of the year of do they want to keep playing? I think they have the talent, but I get the feeling that them and Coach Self are just well, you guys know if we win, in 2 days, like we have to play again, right? Like we just lose this and we can just go home. You guys can all enter the transfer portal and like this can be over. So I think there is a chance that Kansas just like absolutely doesn't show up.
There's nothing desperate about Kansas. Like Arkansas, I could say legitimately not that great of a team, but they've been incredibly desperate over the last couple of weeks, just scrapping away, doing everything they
They
can.
were not a few weeks ago. They were not for sure going to be in the tournament.
So I respect what they've done over the last couple of weeks versus Kansas. You know, I mean, this has been nothing but a downward trajectory. Where coming into the season, what were they ranked?
Number 1
Number 1. And here we are, March,
in the whole country,
and they're 7, and they're not even my favorite 7-10
not 7
matchup.
in the country, a
No,
7 seed.
7 seed. All right, close out the West here. We got St. John's at 2 versus 15 Nebraska. I love St. John's. I think this is a hot team. I think there's a good route here. I'm not scared of Arkansas or Kansas there. I like Texas Tech, but I just see a good road here for St. John's. I really love the way this bracket fell out for them.
My only concern is that you are not the first one to have said something like this, and I just a little concerned that there's just a lot of Rick Pitino and a great story, and oh yeah, they're for sure like they're gonna make a run, like this is gonna be awesome, and just wondering, is it do you get too much praise kind of heaped your way? And there's already been talks of, as a 2 seed, which it's not crazy, but saying, oh well, you know, they go up to Providence and play. That's not too far away from New York City, and then after that, it would be in New Jersey, also not that far away, and just there's just a lot of looking ahead, and a Hall of Fame coach, 2 of them.
I hear it all. I hear it all.
Yeah.
But is there not just still some echoing remembrance of the past couple of years of wait, what division is St. John's in? What division won last year? What year won? What was it before? Connecticut. Like this is could be another Big East run, is what I'm saying. It seems we're all supposed to be wowed by it like we were the last 2 years. I'm trying to predict it this year. This is what I'm saying. I'm falling.
It's fair.
All right. Anything else for your moving on to the Midwest? Houston
Ready
up
to
top
go.
here, playing 16. Houston's good. I don't want. We got to get this thing moving here. I like Houston. They're in a good spot here. I think this next matchup between Gonzaga at 8 and Georgia at 9 is certainly an interesting one. I had Gonzaga ranked pretty highly throughout the year, like early in the year. I think I had Kentucky and Gonzaga as like 2 teams I thought would be really good in the tournament here. I continue to remain with that. I really like what Gonzaga is capable of. Houston will potentially have their hands full if they're able to face them in the second round here. But am I overestimating Georgia here?
I don't think you're overestimating them. Again, same argument from all the other teams, the SEC, and play the best competition. One thing that's interesting is looking at the net ranking, which is partially how they decide on the seeding. And Gonzaga is 8, and in KenPom, Gonzaga is 9, not seed in the country. And so to be coming in as the 8 seed, it seems like they were one of the ones that possibly misseeded.
Possibly. If you're Houston, I'm sure you feel a certain way of like, wait a minute. So second round, we get that team that's arguably ranked 8 in the country, and we're facing them in the second round.
Again, a coach that has a lot of experience, as well as I wish I remembered the stat for it, but they've made the Sweet 16 like a bunch of times in a row. Now, obviously, not as the 8 seed, but more as the 1 or the 2 seed, but just something to keep in mind.
All right, moving down the bracket here. Number 5, Clemson versus 12, McNeese. McNeese, it seems like the story of last year again, where it's like, yeah, they got a lot of older guys that could score, and they're really going to be sneaky at the end of the year. And I think Clemson is very underrated. I've trashed the ACC the entire year. Them being a 5 seed, I think, is one of the more disrespectful things. And I think that there's a really good chance that Clemson can make a big run here. So I'm not falling for all the McNeese things, because they told me all this last year about this McNeese team. I heard it all last year. It was kind of fake news. They didn't look so great in the first round. If they show up this year and they do it against Clemson, I'll look at it all differently again. But until then, I'm feeling pretty good about Clemson.
I agree. I think this is going to be a trendy upset pick. It's a 12 over a 5, McNeese. But exactly like you said, they're playing Gonzaga last year, and it was trendy to do it last year, and Gonzaga came and just absolutely destroyed them. I could see it happening again, and I could see it being a perfect opportunity for Will Wade to say, hey, you know what? you see what I did in the regular season, but I'm in this smaller conference. I just don't have the horses to compete with the big dogs. So moving on up back to a Power 5 school.
Now, if you want to go look at the other 5-12s, I think McNeese would beat Memphis. I think McNeese might beat. Let's see what else we got here. We have the 5-12s. They beat Michigan. I think they beat Michigan. Yeah. So like I think it's very much that they just drew the like I said, Clemson I don't think should be a 5. I think Clemson should be ranked higher. I think at least a 4 personally, but I don't know. I maybe sorry McNeese. This is how it works sometimes. All right,
Yep.
Keeping it moving. Purdue number 4 versus 13 High Point. I keep saying the Braden Smith Purdue thing is going to be a show you want to watch, and they sign up for, and then we keep renewing seasons for, and I keep getting burned, man. Like I'm not saying that they're doomed in this first round here, but like at what point is it like, all right, maybe this isn't the same Purdue team, and that we're just not going to get that ceiling this year.
I think Purdue has been sort of under the radar just because, had Edey, had Jaden Ivey, was much more high profile, make it to the championship game last year. And so I don't think that they're a bad team. So I think they'll be able to take care of High Point. But I think that it's just more to do with their own expectations, where if they were just kind of compared to other teams this year, that they'd be respected a little bit more.
This sort of Purdue point on of this Midwest section of the bracket, everything underneath, this is the get your red pen out area here. There's no way you're going to get this right. If you finish this second half here clean, I think that'll be the more impressive than winning your bracket. As I think this is messy, these next couple here. Illinois at 6 versus the winner of Texas and Xavier in the play-in game. I don't trust any of those teams. And then following that, you get 3 Kentucky versus 14 Troy. Look, Kentucky should win this game. But again, what do you trust about Kentucky at all? Following it all up with UCLA 7 versus 10 Utah State. Like, I don't trust any of those teams I just mentioned. Am I misjudging all of this, or is there a clear-cut favorite or something you could say that's comforting about any of them?
Agreed.
Yeah,
agreed.
Right?
Again,
this is the red ink.
Agreed.
Yeah.
The play-in, sometimes it just like supercharges the team, and Illinois has been all over the place on, are they good? Are they not good? Is it because their guys are hurt? Are they bad? Are they bad at shooting threes? I don't know what team is gonna show up. And if you go ice cold from 3, I mean, that's exactly how these upsets happen. As you get later in the game and the crowd is getting more and more excited for an upset, and everything gets clenched, and then you're missing more threes, and it falls apart. I think it's going to be interesting this year, seeing Kentucky versus Troy and finding out, hey, has this been a Kentucky issue the past few years, or has this been a Cal issue the past few years? I mean, we hammered it last year, but how do you go into a game where basically the team that you're playing against, underdog, and their strategy is get this one guy that comes off the bench and he just rains threes? Did he make crazy threes? Absolutely, for sure. But it seemed like that was their only game plan. And did you not do any scouting on it? Because it wasn't until the second half that they started to face guard him, where it's you needed to be doing stuff way ahead of this. I don't know what else they were going to do if you took away this one weapon. So different coach. Kentucky has for sure had their ups and downs. They had some really big wins. They beat Tennessee twice, but they've also had some head scratching moments. So I think that they need to be focused. But I always like, for a team like Kentucky, they got Amari Bailey. Not Amari Bailey. Is it Amari Bailey? They got the big man, and having that against a mid major, that is always helpful.
I have a hard time thinking that this is just all going to be chalk. Like if you're telling me Purdue, Illinois, Kentucky, and UCLA are all getting out of the first round, I just they're all going to have a good day on the same day. That's going to be the first time that's ever happened.
Oh yeah, then we get to UCLA. I mean, Mick Cronin, he didn't quit on his team, but he was pretty upset with his team midway through the year, and had interesting things to say about him in the press conference afterwards.
A very inconsistent team. There's sneaky defense on KenPom, though. I didn't know that. I was looking at all the numbers, just being like, all right, now that the season's wrapped, the conference tournament's over, all numbers are plugged in. What are the final kind of rankings here on defense, offense? There's a whole bunch of numbers on there, but I was just shocked that UCLA defense was much closer to the top than I would have expected for a team that I feel like they just can't score and are in low scoring games. I don't know if that just represents defense or what, but I don't trust them.
All right, It's not Amari Bailey. It's Amari Williams. Amari Bailey is in the NBA. He played for UCLA a couple of years ago. So that's why I'm going to say I confused him.
Great correction here.
Yep.
All right. I think we summarized all that. Let's quickly just talk about Tennessee, who's the 2 seed at the bottom here, playing 15 Wofford. I like Tennessee. I continue to say that they at least play some defense. I don't really trust their late game scoring, and that's just kind of a weakness that they're going to have to face. But I look at like the teams they might have to play, and I don't know if their late game scoring is going to be any better either. I mean, they might face UCLA or Utah State, and then they might face potentially Illinois or Kentucky, Troy or Texas or Xavier. Like this is a good road here. Like even if I'm Kentucky, I think this is a good road. I like where I'm at.
Especially, yeah, if you're Kentucky, knowing you've already beat Tennessee twice this year, and they're on like some crazy run because they've beaten Tennessee. I don't know if it's been every time, but quite a few times in the past few years. Even when Kentucky has been like struggling for whatever reason, just they get Tennessee on their schedule, and I don't know what happens, but yeah, I think Kentucky's got to be thrilled that if they can make it, that them going head to head with a familiar foe.
This bottom half of the Midwest here, I think, is the sloppiest, most red ink you're going to have all over the bracket. I don't think there's any way you're going to get any of this right, and you're just going to get burned on having a team that should go farther, just going to go out early. Like this is going to be the one. And I think Houston and Clemson are very respectable on the other side here, but it's none of these other teams got to face those teams till we get a couple more rounds in. So could go any direction here. All right, we did it. We got through all 68 matchups or whatever, 68 teams. Too many matchups. You want to remind everyone to join our bracket?
You should definitely join our bracket. We will have it as it'll be underneath on Facebook. It'll be on underneath the what's it in the description. If you can't find it there, if you just go to Yahoo, LCA, LCB, you search it, you'll definitely find us. We got like 30 plus people. We're going to be giving away a $150 Amazon gift card. You're going to get an exclusive podcast t-shirt if you win. I am feeling very good about my chances this year. So, if I win, it's cool. Whoever takes second place, I'll let them have all the cool stuff. But yes, very excited. I have all my pools filled out. I don't have all the brackets filled out yet. I like to kind of spread that out and, almost like once a day or maybe once in the morning, once in the afternoon, kind of just see how I'm feeling, listen to different podcasts, see which ones sway me, see what numbers sway me in the moment. But yes, I'm very excited. I'll be at the games on Thursday. I'll be at the Final Four next month. So yeah, I'm ready for more basketball.
Live and ready to report from the scene. How are we going to do the podcast after the game there? You're going to be at the Final Four. The championship?
We'll do Tuesday like we normally do after the...
You're not going to be traveling? We'll get it figured out.
I'll be close.
You'll be close.
I'm coming back in the morning, so I'll be back around pod time.
Jesus, I swear, if Cooper's in the building, you're going to be so hungover. Until we get there, I'm very excited. I'm just excited to watch a bunch of games. It was fun to have some daytime basketball throughout the week. Little close games here and there.
This is my favorite thing because I got to figure out now. I do my bracket in a little bit. How much of the information did you give that was accurate, that you believe in, that you're just trying to help the listeners out, and how many nuggets you threw in there that are just to throw me off the scent and just try to get into my head?
I think you have such a bias towards me manipulating you, and I truthfully 100% don't hold anything back to any of the listeners. I unleash all the information I have, anything that I think can help you make your decisions of your bracket. I have told you already today. You, on the other hand, apparently have been holding back. I mean, what else? What do you got here? Hold back. What have you held back on us today? All right,
I haven't held back anything.
I don't know. That sounded like a really held back answer right there. Of like, what do you believe or not believe?
I very much. I believe everything that I said.
I know you told everyone to join, but you should really follow us on our Instagram. There's some goofy, funny things I've been posting. Zach's he's very good at Photoshop. He's got a lot of skill sets. Hasn't missed an arm workout in a really long time.
Really long time.
Really long time.
Yeah, I knew in the moment I was going to regret making a comment about your cartoons. But yes, check out the Instagram. Yeah, check out all of our socials. Got a lot of fun things going on right now. This is one of our most fun times of the year.
Yeah, I can't wait for the games to start. I can't believe you're going to the games. I mean, look, it's going to be an incredible atmosphere, but I think this is one of the few days where I could just stay in the command center and watch 4 games on 4 different screens all throughout 2 different days. And I can't wait for it. And you're going to only be watching one. I can't do it with so many other games going on. I'm missing all of it. Can't do it.
In the building, in the same building as in the same night for Rick Pitino, for Bill Self, and for John Calipari. I had to take advantage of the situation.
All right, and we will do NBA next week. It's just a college basketball podcast for this week. Sorry, NBA fans, but we'll be back. Don't worry. I'm very excited to finish this NBA season. There's some salty teams out there that are getting real confident, man. This Boston disrespect. I'm starting it now. I'm starting to say we're being disrespected. We'll talk about it next week. Hopefully, we have a good week so I can keep that momentum going. But go Celtics until then, and best of luck. Get your brackets filled out by Thursday before everything kicks off. Invite your friends, invite everybody. It's a lottery. None of us know any better, right? Pick it by the mascot, pick it by the colors. You got a chance to win. Get it all in by Thursday. We'll be back.
Little column A, little column B.